So this is something that I was wondering, right? Remember, so the other night I sent you that article that's talking about like the efficacy of amateur pornography on tube sites. I was wondering
All right.
I was wondering. Yeah, I know it's kind of
That's
off
true.
or kind of out of left here, but this is an interesting question, right? This is what I'm thinking, right? Obviously, Dooby earlier tonight took a quite extreme stance that any pornography is. He used he used a more extreme term. He said rape because we live in a patriarchal society. I would not agree there. But here's what I wonder: if you go on any of the most popular porn websites, you're going to see a slew of things they're basically filmed with people's iPhones, right? I would say I would hazard a guess that's probably like 50% on some of these websites. Or some of these websites it's only that, right?
I'm gonna go gather some data real quick. So.
Yeah, exactly, right. But this is what I'm wondering. It seems that there's no for a lot of this, there's no way to actually authenticate if this is not quote unquote revenge porn, something that was recorded as if it was going to be shared between just two significant others and then uploaded later. I personally would have a significant ethical qualm if I knew I was consuming something that was revenge porn. And it seems it's kind of impossible to verify of this kind of stuff. And so I have recently, personally, I've been like, I kind of have if I see this kind of stuff when in my perusings, I kind of get I click off of it. It's something that it seems it's like, I don't know, it seems like it's like I'm not sure what a good analogy would be, but like I don't know, maybe buying a product from a country that has like hyper authoritarian. If there's a fascist country, it's a little extreme example, but you can't verify if the thing you're getting is not like unethically sourced. I wonder, what is the take here? Is there a situation here where it's kind of like you can't tell, so it's up there? Once it's on there, it's on there. That's an unreasonable kind of thing to put on the consumer, or is that something that we should be mindful of when we're consuming these kind of like when we're consuming pornography?
I think
Toby, I wanted to ask sorry, can I just ask a clarifying question? You said you click off. You said you click off in your perusings. Do you mean you click off if you feel it's amateur or if you feel like it's revenge?
I like avoid websites now that I feel like kind of have stuff that I feel like is impossible to verify if it's revenge porn or not. I feel like there's a bit of an ethical problem of allowing this kind of stuff to be uploaded. I'm not sure how you would verify it, but I know that like some websites like Pornhub have like have like an official system where like couples will upload stuff, and it's kind of like they have like an OnlyFans like situation where they're kind of like amateur producers. That's a lot more ethical. But there are some of these websites function like YouTube. You just upload a video and then you can just do whatever you want. Those websites, I feel like there's a big ethical problem there.
So
what's
is
the
there?
Okay.
Go on. No, I don't want.
I was just gonna wait. What's the difference between, like, you're saying there's some amateur that is more professional, or like what's it? How do you distinguish between like just amateur and stuff that seems like revenge? I'm still not understanding. That's just confusing me.
Yeah, I mean like OnlyFans, there are people that just
Wait, are you talking about?
Go ahead. You want to ask a question?
I was gonna say, you're talking about like people that do like cell phone quality videos compared to like people with actual like cameras or something.
Exactly.
Like
that. Yeah. There's some people that basically they're basically like amateur YouTubers, but the YouTube videos they make are pornography. And then there's some people. Then there's some videos that are literally it just is somebody that just turned on their camera during sex, right?
Okay.
So,
but hold on. But revenge porn could be lots of things. Can come in lots of different forms. So like simply releasing the porn without the consent of your partner, right, could be an act of revenge, right? So like you guys could have made it consensually, and it could be of quality, right? Like this is what for your personal consumption. You could have used fancy equipment to do so, and it looks great. But then releasing it, that's the revenge aspect is. I see what you're saying there. Like it's more likely if it's like a revenge. Sorry, excuse me, like a smartphone camera, like like in some odd angle, and that might be fishy, but it could be anything.
Okay, so I don't have a large or a strong take on this, but I would say that
it's pretty large. No, I mean I'm sure it's
fair enough.
Huge,
okay.
I have above average, as I've been told.
Sure. Okay. But simply because you cannot verify whether it is or is not revenge porn. I don't think is sufficient to uh to send me scurrying away, half cocked, so to speak. No, I would have to now if I were able to ascertain and it came to my knowledge that yes, this was revenge porn. Yes, I think I have an ethical duty to just click away, not to consume that media, etc. I think that there is definitely an ethical duty there. However, um, I just don't see that it's a requirement that we should be putting on the consumer to have to verify whether or not it is. Now, there's an argument to be made: should we require websites that host these things to do that? Uh, that's a good question. Should we? I could see some problems with that. I think it might have a chilling effect on those who want to go their own way and not, start up their own small porn kingdom or whatever. And if they don't want to go through OnlyFans or they don't want to go through Pornhub or these other sites, I think that having this might have a chilling effect on that. Is that something we want? Is that something we're okay with, gang? Is that? I'm not.
Wait, sorry. I was responding to somebody in chat. Could you repeat the last thing? What do we not want?
We don't want to require small independent amateurs to have to go through some sort of a big company name website. So if we do require websites to have a verification process, um, making that as simple and easy as possible, I think, is important, because if we don't and it becomes an expensive endeavor, it can be used to gatekeep, and so you have to funnel people into these big websites, and I think that's
I think
not something we want.
Sorry to interrupt, but I think you can make a really good argument that a porn website needs to be a publisher. That the things they put on that website, they need to have responsibility of. There have been, for example, Pornhub. There are I'll find the article just in a moment. They reference in that article an instance of a woman who responded for 2 weeks, sent emails to the Pornhub like support thing because she saw a video on Pornhub of her childhood sexual abuse that had been uploaded, and took 2 weeks for her to get it taken down and stuff like that. And in Pornhub, that's a massive fucking breaking, incredible crime, right? That might be an international crime, right? And, because I think Pornhub is a European company, right? And what Pornhub literally, they have no repercussion. They get a bad news article in an Atlantic post, right? I don't know, but on the other hand, I understand what you're saying, that there should be access to this.
Yeah, like
Okay, go ahead, please.
like I said, it's just like Pornhub did actually have I think after that story, that's when they got rid of all their non-verified content. So like I mean there are repercussions, and it's it's a huge website, I'll be honest. The big old PH, but like it's I could see where she's like upset that it went 2 weeks with her like having to notice it, and then 2 weeks of her being unanswered. But like that's the same with a lot of these big old companies, their support staff's like lacking, whether they don't feel it's like that important to their bottom line or whatever. But it's just it's a big it's just a big ask on companies, I think, to keep their supports active like that. And then like the other guy said, just do we want to make these bigger companies just bigger and badder because everyone has to go to them?
Do we? I think something that is interesting that that we haven't actually tackled is, do we need these sites at all? Right. So these.
Wait.
Hold on.
Careful.
Breathe.
Careful.
Breathe. Specifically, these tube sites. Not porn in general. All right. I'm not Dooby. Dooby will be here soon. But specifically, these tube sites where anyone can upload. Now, I would say that the advantage. What chat starting to get to me. I would say that the advantage here is almost strictly the amateur scene, right? Like you can see all the other stuff from the major publishers, right? Like they have their own sites where you can find their stuff. And that's if you want to pay for them. That's another thing, right? If you're willing to pay. The tube sites allow you to see a lot of this stuff for free, or these clips of this stuff for free. So, is the amateur market something that we value enough that we want to preserve that, right? Because it seems like if you're asking what Kobe said, right, asking them to be a publisher, well, then that's a monumental task, one that they may not be able to reasonably do, which effectively means that you're banning them. So, is that an okay price to pay for these to make sure revenge porn or other unsavory types of porn doesn't end up there?
Well, just to be fair, I would say to my position, Pornhub has, I think, taken steps in the right direction, as was noted here, by requiring people to go through a verification process, these kinds of things, and I think devoting more resources to it. I think there can be a middle ground between publisher and taking responsibility for what's on the platform. But people in chat are giving me some good pushback. But this is what I would consider. We would agree that with certain things like medicine, like the production of medicine, there has to be like unbelievably high standards of the production of this because it's just so important. And the truth of it is that it is true that in a very materialist sense, there isn't much difference between somebody filming John Wick, an action movie pretending to kill people, and somebody filming a pornography, right? But the truth of it is that we don't exist in just a materialist universe. We are social creatures, and there is both a psychological and social consequence to having these things out in the ether. In the article that I linked, there was a porn star that they quote talking about, she has a daughter now. She's moving on in her life, and she regrets. She says that she would burn every single one of the tapes if she could. And that's a complicated quandary. There are, going back to the action star example, there are many action stars that later on in their life became Christian or religious or something like this, and they don't like their movies. They don't like the idea that they portrayed a gangster lifestyle or something like this. But I would argue a death of the author there, right? You can watch the movie. But then on the other side, again, going back to the social constructivist side, I feel that there's something to the idea that there's just something different in our society about about an intimate sex act in a movie that depicts, it's a recreation of something.
But there isn't that many. Like, not every there isn't a situation that anyone will turn to like Kirk Cameron, who just like, I'm now a Christian and I'm going to create dumb movies on Pureflix. But I could have a better understanding for those who came from the field of porn acting for porn films and then want to erase all of that so that they could have an actual career, like some lucky actors who were able to be in regular films or TV shows. Like, I think one of the main actresses from like Lucifer was like a porn star before she even became famous in that show. And a lot of that, much to what have heard from people who said about work, that she just regrets it. But a lot of it is obviously too, you need the money. It's always about the money.
So I just wanted to say quickly, Kirk Cameron's a great reference. Good work on there. And someone else said Kevin Sorbo, and both of them broke my heart. Kevin Sorbo, he was great in his past stuff. Anyway, whatever. Sorry, I know it just bothered me. But yes, you can if you want to go on that.
Yeah, it really sucks to see someone like Kirk Cameron's talent ends up going to a dark path. Even I would probably maybe GSU would disagree on that.
What happened? I'm sorry.
In chat, 6 Foot Ant brought up there's a term that I wasn't remembering: the right to be forgotten. That's the term that's used. I think in Germany has it. Yeah. That they're using now. This is a really interesting concept. I think that this deals with in a very, very probably one of the most forefronts of this. Right now, it is true that if you put something on the internet, it is basically there forever. Especially if it's a piece of digital information that people want, like a video of somebody having sex or something like that. It's going to be there forever, right? It's very hard to take it off, right? And it is true that there's a social utility of somebody being able to start over, to not be able to have all these things out. In Germany, for example, if you go onto the game GeoGuessr and you go to Germany, you can't look at anybody's front yards, anybody's windows. They blur them all out because they have a higher standard of privacy. It's interesting. It seems that our technology is vastly going ahead of what we would consider just 25 years ago as standard ideas of privacy, right? Everything we do now is tracked. And if you were to say that, imagine telling that to somebody who has an old Commodore 64 computer, not even barely connected to the internet, and you tell them in the future everything you're going to be tracked. You're going to be able to open up your iPhone and do the exact thing. The moral frontier is going quicker than technology is going quicker than the moral frontier. We can philosophize about it.
Yeah. So I have a few concerns.
Kobe, can I ask Kobe a question real quick? So Kobe, knowing that these complexities exist where, things we do can be around forever, you do disagree with the people who come on these panels saying little kids should engage with sex, right?
Wait, sorry.
What?
Just so I can know what I'm answering, just please respond to that.
I'm just calling out the hypocrisy of a bunch of people that come on here saying, little kids should be able to engage in sex, and it's complicated, but they understand it. Right?
Okay, I have a question. I have actual kind of concerns.
Little kids should be nowhere near sex.
Why are you shooting at our friend? We know who you're talking to here, but go ahead, Wick. So,
with the right to be forgotten, and this transcends, I guess, the kind of the revenge porn discussion here. One of the concerns I have with things like this is when you want to make a movie, when you want to make a film, pornographic or not, and there's a transaction made and say, hey, I want to hire you for your services, and I'm going to pay you so much money to be in my movie, and I'm going to have the right to sell this movie. I'm going to have the right to make the money off this movie, etc. At what point does the person who makes this transaction say in a month they decide, you know what? No, that movie sucked. I don't want him to make any other movies. I want to exercise my right to be forgotten. I want this taken down. I don't want it to be able to be sold. Like, there has to be some protection in there for the person producing the movie, for the person producing the content, right?
Well, actually,
sorry, can I?
Wait.
Go ahead.
Isn't that what a contract is for?
Yeah, but with the right to be forgotten.
Wait.
Can I go?
Go ahead, Dan.
Okay, so as I do agree. I mean, Wick brought up a point that we want to. There's a major difference between going to the further extent of accuracy. Just as I want to be forgotten from a bad movie, for example, Nick Cage wants to get rid of his acting from Left Behind and The Wicker Man, which are very bad movies, but to then would the evidence of that whole entire process of them making a movie was to make money, to then I would agree to maybe a standpoint of that it would, I think, would be out of the question if the product you're making, or if it's porn or something like that. I'm saying this to the principal stance is to make money. Then I think the right to be forgotten will not extend to that. If it's like a tweets to other things that has shown through the internet that hasn't been done through the process of the course to make money, then probably I don't think that's fair game to allow that to happen. To
be clear, I am not entirely familiar with the German law in this case. So
yeah. I've been recently listening to a great Courses Plus about our wonderful founding fathers, and something that I found is that a lot of our American liberty is founded on the idea of reasonable, to a reasonable extent. What reasonable means was thrown off into the future. They can deal with that. In the future, they can figure out what a reasonable amount of firearms is, what a reasonable extension into Indian territory is, et cetera, et cetera, or Native American territory is. I think that I would invoke the tradition of the founding fathers here. I think there's a reasonable extent here, right? Imagine if, for example, going back to the movies, right? What was the movie? During the filming, I think Crow 2, the actor of that accidentally killed himself. He shot himself in the head on accident. Imagine if that happened in a movie, right? They're filming a movie and somebody just dies, right? Something happens. They accidentally give a loaded gun, and there's just a on film, literally caught in 4K, a murder. I think the family should probably be able to say, no, don't use that. Please do not put that in the movie. If Michael Bay decides, oh yeah, we're going to use that shot. Yeah, I think that that's a reasonable extent there. I don't think that if somebody accidentally farts on camera and they use that in the bloopers. Okay, you accidentally that's not the reasonable.
Yeah, that's understandable. I don't want to spend too long. It's to the matter of But what if like it gets to like the family where they are like they disagreed with the actor's choice to be in like Keith Ledger there's died during the filming of The Dark Knight.
Dooby came.
And then
He summoned
the family was like, this is like, we are very traditional values and we don't want to have our son or cousin or nephew to be represented as a crazy psychopath in a action movie. Would that case be for Forgotten? I don't think so.
Well, I think the argument. Oh, sorry.
There's even more. So I was just going to give you more examples of that, right? Like, in Star Wars, the had the CGI representation of Tarkin, Admiral Tarkin, right? But dude's dead.
And Leia too.
yeah, and Leia as well. Yeah. Dead, right? And so the families had said a contract was signed previously, right? But family has said that you don't want their images used at all. Like where are the lines here? But sorry, yeah, go ahead.
This is the argument that I would make, and I would like to let Dooby in because I think that I'm excited to hear what Dooby has to say about all this. But the line that I would draw is I think what the principle we're trying to isolate here for is the act being depicted. I don't think the Heath Ledger example is problematic, or maybe it's a problematic element to it, but it's not as problematic because that's a instance of a dead person's likeness being used. It's a film that they had agreed upon. They filmed the whole thing of their consent, etc. The death they didn't film. You cannot consent. I mean, you can consent to your death being filmed, I guess. But in the instance that I depicted, you're not consenting to your death being filmed, right? I would argue that the act of the death being filmed is the important bit there. In the same way that I think you can make the argument to sex, the sex being different than movies and stuff.
So okay. Well, Dooby's here. I want to give him a chance to, yell at all of us, really. Tell us what kind of the base perverts we are. But before that, I guess, yeah. For this, I'm not sure if or maybe we already had, right? You're saying to reasonableness, right? And that you're saying this is the in between ground, in between publisher and not. I'm just wondering, like, so first of all, I think revenge porn is bad. It's very bad. It's a very bad thing, and we shouldn't be promoting that, and it should be taken down. But I guess moving on from that, just for a second, the star you said was Lana Rhoades, I think, is the star you said.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, that has regrets. Well, every so often this happens. There's like a star that comes out, so I have regrets over what happened, and they might have really good reasons for that. Like, for instance, like I suffered some sort of abuse during my career, right? That could be a very good reason. But beyond that, right, like putting abuse aside, which should not be allowed, certainly. But beyond that, simply like having regrets, right? Like a contract was signed, right? Like what do you want me to do about that? Like, I regret lots of things I've done in the past, but like,
you've done a lot of things to that porn in the past. What?
Yep. That's, but like, I, if that's the case, and I haven't read this article, so I haven't seen like her exact objections, right? But if it's not for straight up abuse, then like, should anyone care? Like,
well,
depends how good is this said film. I'm joking.
I don't want to filibuster the panel too much. I think you're asking a good question there. Just to elucidate the article a little bit more, the point that Lana makes is that she feels, at least, that the way the porn industry is set up is that it is basically just like an abusive environment in which saying no and not doing what is encouraged of the performer is just, it's not, you don't exist in the environment if you don't do that, and that and so that in which the line between yes and no becomes incredibly blurred.
But that's any workplace under capitalism.
I was gonna say it sounded so bad optically that I just
I'll do it for you.
I would agree. This is I think that the labor dynamic exists in sex work, and I think that there also is that extra social dynamic we're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, And,
I didn't want to say it.
And so, but should we have a special exception when it comes to sex? I don't. Is that worthy? I would say probably no. I'm just gonna throw it out there. I would say no. But I think there might be a reasonable case to say that for this specific thing that we would have some sort of exception, and that we talk about consent all the time. If my friend Joseph was here, she would yell at me for even saying the words.
I wish she was.
But yeah, and she'd have interesting thoughts on this altogether, really. But to say, like, this is, and I've made this point many times before, in that, like, in any work environment, right, where like it's your livelihood's involved, and you got to make that money, you got to feed your family. Well, then, like, what does it mean for me to say yes to anything, in that environment? So, I don't know. So, let's go to Dooby and then Rage.
Dooby, you got your camera on, you know that, right?
I do. Wow. So what I'm curious about is like, so maybe this is the wrong group to ask this to, but how many of you would be comfortable with naked pictures of yourself or videos of you masturbating or having sex just being available online freely for people to see?
I would, if there's a demand, and a market, then I don't know. Sure, why not?
Yeah, I see some people raising their hand, like GSU. I knew you were degenerate, like most Christians.
Yeah.
The rest of you, I saw some heads shaking. Look, so the reason there's like this, I want to talk about like the reason people are like hesitant to say yes to that, right? There is some stigma, right, surrounding naked images of your body, videos of your body, just being freely available to people. There's some stigma around like promiscuous sex, right? With men and women, men tend to get celebrated generally, but women tend to get put down for being promiscuous. And I think that most people would agree to that, right? So whether or not I think those attitudes are genuinely pretty unhealthy, but they exist. Right? We live in a patriarchal society where this is the case. That being said, I'm wondering, like, that being the case, I'm wondering, like, given that we live in this patriarchal society, right? Why would we seek to encourage or to make it easier for women, for young people, old people, whoever the fuck, right? Young men even to get into porn, to put their images out there, and they're encouraged to do this by these people when they're very young. As soon as they turn 18, it's like, oh God, you're 18, put your tits online, like we saw with that Danielle Bergoli girl, right? Why should we encourage these people to do this? Why should we make it more socially acceptable for them to do this? Why should we encourage the market that feeds this kind of I don't want to say degenerate, but I'm going to say degenerate behavior, right? Why this seems on its face exploitative, especially of like young people, because young people are the ones that get into porn, right? It's pretty rare that you see a 30, 40-year-old porn actress, unless you're one of those weirdos.
buddy.
No, I'm not done. Unless you're one of those weirdos that's been into porn so long, you're into the really crazy shit where you're looking at old ladies have sex, right?
I want to.
They're not old. Like, they're not
No,
old.
I'm sorry.
A 30-year-old woman
If
is
you're a
not an old
30-year-old
lady.
woman, I don't want to see you naked. I'm sorry.
They're not like that.
Yeah, Dooby, let's go back into the private.
Can I quickly respond to it? Thanks for the rage.
No, wait. So, Dooby, are you effective? Actually, I'm not sure what you're asking here, but that's why I ask you. So are you asking for to raise the minimum age that people can be involved? Like, or sorry, you want to get rid of a point altogether, but the point should be better if we raise the minimum age, right? So let's say we conceded that 18-year-olds make bad decisions. In fact, I've said this many times on this channel, right? So I might be able an ally with you here. That maybe they aren't or not competent enough. If they're not competent enough to drink, apparently, according to our society, then maybe putting themselves out there on camera, making a decision that will be there for life once it's out there, right? It might be too much for them. So maybe like wait until like you're 25 or something, and then you can join. Would that make the porn industry better in your mind?
I think that would make it a little bit better, but we still have all the other problems with the porn industry, right? So I think that would make it less. That would make it less targeted at children, because right now, again, as soon as someone turns the fucking clock to 18 years old, and if they're a model, you have all these dudes telling them to get into porn and shit where they pay like anywhere from $300 to $800 for like amateur shoots or whatever, right? Or they sometimes they'll show their fucking ID
You
on
got some
camera.
pretty
Oh,
insightful
look,
information
look,
there, dude.
I've looked this up because I care about this. I care about people. I'm a feminist. So they hold up their ID on camera, right? And they're like, oh, look, I just turned 18. Now I'm going to put this dick in my ass, right? That's fucking disgusting. Right? This is obviously a predatory industry. And I don't think that we should be encouraging that. In fact, I think that I don't think there are any good arguments for allowing this to remain legal.
Okay.
Right. I know that you guys like to jerk off, right? I like to jerk off sometimes too. Just use your fucking imagination. I don't see any reason to encourage to continue the degradation of women in our society. And it happens to men too, but it's primarily women, let's be honest, through porn.
Okay, so I want to give
Well, I got a counter.
Rage. Hold on. Let's go. Rage.
Yeah, I'm back.
Do you want to go now, and then we'll go to Dan, and then Deprick, and then Depick.
Deprick. Okay, all right.
Whatever it is. And
Just kidding.
GSU.
My question is kind of both to Prime and to Dooby, because like this whole idea of like exploitation. To Dooby, it would be if you're saying that the porn industry is exploitative, and we have this whole sentiment like that all interactions when you have an employer are exploitative. Like, do you have problems with like employment in general and people not being able to control, like having to fulfill the job roles that they're signed up for when they sign it, they do the contract or whatever? And then I guess to Prime would be the inverse. If you have like if all employer-employee relationships are exploitative, like what solution is there to that? Should people like not be able to enter into contracts with each other to do contracted work or stuff like that?
Do you want to go first or go first?
Yeah, so
Maybe this sounds like what I asked you earlier, doesn't it?
Yeah, so I'm someone who would like to see. I think nations should take care of their people. Just put plainly, I would like to see us move toward a system that doesn't require people to do work, whether that's like going pushing a button on a factory every day, or sucking dick on camera, or in a street, in an alley somewhere, to survive. I'd like to move a system where all the basic needs, housing, clothing, food, education, healthcare, all these things are provided to citizens just because they're citizens. Right? And from there, they can make their own decisions without the coercion that currently exists under a capitalist system.
Okay, so
then can I ask Dooby one follow-up question? With that, if we had a society that did meet all those needs, would you then be okay with the pornography industry?
That would be, I don't know if it's step one, but it's one step. It's one requirement for me. The next requirement would be that we would need to massively undo the patriarchal structure of society as it is. Right? I think that the porn as it is encourages young men to see women as sex objects. It encourages women to present themselves as sex objects, to feel like they need to have cum on their face and in their hair, and to be open to anal and choking and punching, all this crazy shit, because that's what they think they need to do to make their partner happy, because that's what they're seeing in porn. It teaches men that this is what sex is, and if you don't have a 30-inch dick, you're not a real man, right? These are all really negative things.
So
right, that I think
hold on, I'll never accept that from the motherfucker who calls men manlets, who calls them manlets and chat below 6 foot.
No, look,
Fuck you.
Wait, we don't.
Hold on, no,
Wait.
Prime, you're actually wrong. It's if you're under 6'2", you're a manlet. Okay, above 6'4", if you're 6'5"
like
and up,
6'2"
you're
and
a
a half,
fucking
bro?
giraffe and you're disgusting. No, I'm 6'4".
Okay, all
I'll
right.
take a few inches off your freaking.
Okay, so I'll try to answer the question that was presented to me. So you're saying, if work is not entirely quote unquote consensual, people enter into contracts. Well, yeah, I mean, I think these things work on a spectrum, and we understand that, right? Like, I don't think that things entirely need to be consensual. Let's keep this out of the sexual aspect for now. But I think things don't necessarily need to be entirely consensual. I think that we can understand that we live in a world with limited resources, and in the exchange of those resources, someone is going to be on the the smaller end of the stick. Is that what I'm looking? I don't know, whatever, right? Like, gets the worst of the deal. That doesn't necessarily mean that because they aren't having perfect equity during this trade of resources, that we should abolish contracts, right? And that, like, well, it's all invalid because this person is not on the exact same level, right? The power imbalances are a thing. They're a fact. They're a part of the human condition, is that power imbalances exist. So in that case, I would say it's fine. I hope that made sense. I don't know. Kind of rambled there.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. I
Okay.
understand what you're saying.
All right. If anyone thinks that doesn't make sense, you're free to tell me, because I don't know. All right. But all right. So let's go to Dan to pick GSU Wick.
Yeah. So much stuff is said all at once that it almost feels like a Rob Noor conversation. But let's do the first part. I don't know why you brought up Danielle Bergoli. I mean, she isn't that much relevant to the whole scene of porn, other than the whole thing about her getting like abused by the people that Dr. Phil sent her to.
Not true.
Okay, and a lot of the other point, and too much of that comes from her becoming a meme, and a lot of it where it was her the only way you could.
Okay, I'll explain really quickly why I brought
can I finish my point?
Sure, but you're not understanding why I brought
Can
her
I
up.
finish my point?
You may continue.
Okay. And like much of her comes from being a meme, and the only thing you could leave onto is her bad behavior, which then leads to her becoming bad baby, which is like stereotypical. When she eventually got older, not 13 anymore, calling like see you back outside with a hood accent. It's a lot of that obviously to her. She regrets much of it and knows what's right and wrong now. And now she's dealing with taking down what is stuff that's going on with Dr. Phil that what he's been doing for all these years.
Okay, so I'm going to explain why I brought it up, because maybe you just didn't see this in the news, right? That's totally fair. Which is surprising. I feel like you're someone who would follow porn news. But what happened is that so the moment she turned 18 years old, I think the next day, right? Well, no, the moment she turned 18, people were pushing her to make an OnlyFans account. Yeah, to make her an OnlyFans account, right? Saying, oh, you got to get on OnlyFans. You got to get on OnlyFans. And she did. She got on OnlyFans like the next day. And immediately she made like $1 million or some crazy shit in the first few days, right? Because all these grown ass men wanted to see a freshly 18-year-old girl get naked, right? And the incentive existed there for this person who's barely more than a child. I would still consider her a child because she's like 18 years old, right? Personally, the incentive is there, the money, for her to get on camera, take off her clothes, and make really shitty decisions that are gonna affect her entire fucking life, right? So that's why I brought her up.
Okay. All right. So let's go to pick GSU Wick Rage.
Yeah, I don't know. It's, for me at least, it's a little weird. Like, but I don't necessarily have a problem with knuckleheads who want to, shoot their stuff. Like, at least I think nowadays everyone knows that. Oh shoot, most people know you do something, it's gonna be on the internet forever, right? But like with the porn stuff, at least I find it a little weird that it's like oh shoot, we shouldn't have to view women as like sex objects or whatever, which I agree. That's pretty bad way to look at more than half the population. But then when people express their imagination through like hentai and stuff like that, there's a problem. According to Mr. Dooby, I was just wondering, like, why is there such a distinction? Like.
Wait, I'm sorry. Do
Don't
you think that I'm okay with hentai?
Well,
don't
no,
you think
you're not,
hentai-
right?
Why shouldn't
I-
you
I-
be
No, I'm not.
okay with hentai?
Well,
Okay,
the pig.
so
Don't you
I
think
know that-
hentai does the exact same stuff as like in real life porn? It infantile. I
But
mean, it makes like
that's.
infantile women seem like it does the same stuff.
But I mean,
If
Not only
anything,
does it
it
make
it
infantile
makes
women
it
seem
even
attractive,
worse.
but they have like women with exaggerated breasts and shit, like
Yeah,
dancing
it
around
makes
like
it
it doesn't
worse.
break their fucking back, right? So they do the same shit where they present women as like damsels in distress that are there for men to save and then fuck after they save them with their giant, like cow titties, right? So like it's the same thing. You're still pushing the same patriarchal shit onto people.
but don't. I like. It sounds like really like misogynist of me to say, but there are some women who are like very, damn, bro. I
Yeah, women
you
just
know.
love being abused, right? That's what they're for.
See,
They just
no,
love
no.
being
See,
choked
I
and
hate
punched
that
and
shit.
spat
I'm not
on.
into that at
Yeah,
all. There's
women
some
just love
fucking
that
knuckleheads
naturally.
who are
That
into
comes from
being
nowhere.
That's
That's
just
not
kind of
socially
cringe.
conditioned at all, right?
No, I don't think so. Some people like I don't think daddy is like a socially conditioned thing. People say, "Oh, daddy has like a." Oh shoot, or actually, no, it is socially conditioned because then people are
Yeah.
saying. But I mean, like,
Why do you like do you associate like acting in porn as like empowering to women? Like, do you view it as that?
I mean, they're shitty actors, but like, I do think it is a form of empowerment. Like, they want to express themselves in a certain way. Like, let them, you know.
Would you feel empowered having your ass pumped by a giant
No,
dude on camera?
See, I'm not really into that, but like,
Oh,
hell,
okay.
dude, if I was, sure, why not? Like,
Gotta charge up.
Would you feel empowered if your sister was in it? Do you think she'd feel
Oh
empowered?
no.
Would you feel
Okay,
like that?
here's what you're doing.
I mean,
No bullshit. No, Depict. Don't go down this lane with him. No, fuck that.
what are you talking about?
No. I'm not yelling at you. I'm
baby.
yelling at Dooby. Don't go down this fucking lane with us, right? Like
That's
trying.
the truth.
No. See, what you're trying to do is appeal to disgust, right? Well, most of us. I'm gonna just assume most of us here are heterosexual men, right? And that heterosexual men surely would not want to have that stuff happen to them, right? And so, well, of course, oh yeah, I wouldn't want that. Well, okay, well, if you don't want that, of course, we can extrapolate this to these other people, right? Like their choices are their choices, right? And and if you're an actual feminist, right, then part of that would be understanding that these women can make their choices. Right now, I think you have an interesting argument in terms of like maybe the younger individuals. Okay, all right, but let's put that aside then. Let's even give you that. Let's put that aside. But to say that all the other actors, and there are plenty of actresses who don't fall within the 18 to 24-year-old range, right? There's actually quite a few there, right? Apparently, you don't want to see them, but quite a few. Uh, like they can make their own choices. Some are excited, some of them are proud, right? They can answer this question, like the classic question of, oh yeah, well, what if it was your fucking daughter, right? Like the fuck, right? They would say, well, some of them would say, I've heard them say, that their daughters can make their own choices, just like they had made their own choices, and they'd support them in any way they can. And I'll answer that question literally the exact same way. If it was my daughter, I would say, hey, make your choices. I'd want you to be educated on all your choices, just like for anything else, right? Just before, like, any other part of capitalism. I'm going to be educated. But, like, this idea of disgust. And then ownership. That's another thing, right? With the daughter thing. It's like, oh, well, this other man is violating your daughter. You're literally playing into this patriarchal bullshit.
Shit, bro, like, that's what happens on your
that's
wedding
not
night.
true. Wait, hold on. So I want you to understand what I'm talking about. So I think that there's like a misconception, I think. So we think that freedom and the ability to make your own choices is just inherently good, right? But if someone has the ability to make choices that hurt them, right, and we're allowing them the freedom to make choices that hurt them, right, in the current like society, the current like social cultural structure, whatever, right? I guess it's a type of freedom, but it's the same freedom as like allowing a meth addict to shoot up meth every day, right? So the reason I brought up how empowered he'd feel if his sister did this, right, or his mother, or his spouse, or whoever, which this is right opposite and go down, is because I think that's not true. I don't think people actually believe that this is empowering to women. I don't think people believe that women.
Maybe ask a
Wait, hold
woman.
on. No, I don't.
Yeah.
I've spoken to. Wait, hold on. Wait.
I don't need a woman.
Let me get
Let me finish this
into
point,
that.
and then
Let
we
me-
can, yeah.
So I have spoken to many women about this, by the way. But the one problem that you run into with some women, I'm not saying Amanda's like this, but it's something that we need to like recognize as men who exist in this patriarchal society, is that women are trained from birth, right, by media by families, by religion, by their friend groups, by their teachers, to paint themselves, to put like paint on their faces, to cut all their hair, to speak when spoken to wear uncomfortable ass high heels, right? To do all these things for the pleasure of men, right? So this is the society that we live in, right? So it just seems like it seems like kind of counterintuitive to me to say that women are like meant to we should encourage women or empower, quote unquote, empower women to put themselves into situations where they're being fucked on camera for the pleasure of men at home who are jerking themselves off, and their images are online forever, despite the social stigma associated with promiscuity and all that means for them down the road. Because like it's for them, because they're doing it for them. It just seems like men coping with the fact that they want to jerk off at home, and they're using the empowerment of women to do that.
Okay,
I just
Yeah,
how
so
is
it was my
hold
turn.
on. Yeah, we got a list here. GSU, Wick, Rage, Amanda. I guess to be one out there. All right. Go ahead, GSU.
Yeah, so Prime, after the closed panel, that was like an hour before I jumped on the open, and it was because me and Dooby were talking about this very argument. And what's hilarious is I told Dooby he was gift scalloping, which is what Wick told him. I told Dooby he was trying to appeal to emotion and disgust, which is what you told him. I told him like everything that everybody's been saying in this panel. And like the root of it is Doobie just doesn't believe that women should have the freedom to express themselves sexually as they want. And he is now jumping to this whole like postmodernist view of the world is just warring oppressor versus oppressed, and really women don't really want this. We've just altered them to the point where they're just pleasing us, right? And it's really silly. Like and this is why I asked him that he should talk to a few people, because he was saying stuff like women don't like to be choked and women don't like their ass slapped and all this stuff. And I'm like, bro, I don't know what women you've engaged in, but there's a wide variety of women, and some
Yeah.
women actually do like these things. And to just simply say, "Oh no, any woman that likes it is because of social conditioning," is like is to reject the idea that they could ever have personal like sexual freedom. Like it's terrible.
And actually, I think something interesting here is the idea about this uh this freedom, right? Like, okay, a lot of people like to play with taboos, right? So like religious taboos, right? Something that's like like religious iconography, like during sex, is like one way of doing things, right? And you could really get off on like a woman in a nun outfit. That's a socially conditioned thing. Does that necessarily mean it's bad? Like, does that just because something is socially conditioned and doesn't naturally spring forth from the mind? I mean, I think so many things about attraction are socially conditioned. So if that's the case, does it necessarily invalidate um someone's experiences or someone's wants and desires just because it falls under that category of like it's been instilled by society? Um, So we can go to Wick, Rage, Amanda if she comes back, and 2B.
Okay. So I'm not going to go too much into the argument of freedom for women to make their own choices. I think Prime has hit on that very well. GSU Gambit hit on that very well as well. Their arguments are very sound. So I won't go down that route. I would agree with you that there are problems with the porn industry as it exists today that we can look at and see that there's exploitive in a lot of ways. I wouldn't disagree there. However, and instead of just blowing it up just because we have holes in our boat, we should fix the holes. We should fix those exploitive practices. However, just the idea that a woman who chooses to and who wants to do these things for money, um, that should be allowed. We don't want to close that off. Some people, this is what they have. We have to live in a society. I'd love to live in a society where no one had to do something they didn't want to for money, but that's the thing. So if someone says, "Oh man, I don't have a lot of options," well, I enjoy this. Let's do it. Why not? I think they should be allowed to make that choice if they're fully, cognizant and fully functional. If they're able to make that choice of their own free will, we shouldn't, or nor should the government be able to say, no, you can't do that.
Can I ask Dooby a very brief question from chat? Dooby, do you think the production of gay pornography that's specifically homosexual, or like man on man, like homosexual, do you think that's more ethical because there isn't the patriarchal element?
I think that yeah, in some ways, yes. I think that there's less of a stigma, right, associated with men and promiscuity. And within the gay community, less of a stigma with promiscuity in general. Right? I think gay people are like on average way more promiscuous than straight people, which makes sense because they don't need to worry about like getting pregnant and shit, right? I'd be fucking all the time too if I didn't need to worry about.
But when toxic masculinity, on the other side of this, when toxic masculinity still like play a part, like the idea of like
male gaze,
like what a man should look like, right? Like going back to Dooby and his fucking manless comments, right? Like what a man, what a man should look like, and who should be dominated, right? Like and like how these interactions should. I'm just like thinking out loud.
Yeah, that still exists.
Yeah,
that still definitely exists, even with like in gay porn, I'm sure. But I think that it's considering that we live in a patriarchy, and these men wouldn't be affected by the patriarchy in the same way that women are. I think they'd probably be affected in a less less extreme way. That I'm sure they still get it because they're gay, and in the patriarchy, they typically don't like gay men. But there's no like outward identify that you're gay, right? Whereas if you're a woman, you can see that you're a woman and you're subjected to all the training from birth that women get.
Okay. What about one more question then. What about women or like lesbian porn created by women for women?
I think that like so the problem isn't so much that like this is why Gambit thought I was Gish Galpin. This is a really complex issue. Right, so even if you were to subtract, let's say, the promiscuity problem, and I don't know if that goes away, if it's like women having sex with other women, like intuitively, I want to say that men have less of a problem with women having sex with a lot of women before they get into a relationship, but I have no idea if that's true. But you still need to deal with the fact that these women, even engaging in their own, lesbian porn or whatever, they're still being exploited by the producers, by the company that's doing this. They're still, and worse, I think personally, it's much worse that they are enabling and furthering all the patriarchal stereotypes and all the terrible body image issues.
No. I can't. Hold on, that doesn't make, dude. First of all, like, yeah, one, I don't see how like then the gay male porn actors aren't under the same pressures, and then two, the in terms of like the body images, right? Like that could be for porn. It could be a wide variety of a whole spectrum of body types, right? That all exists, right? You are saying that within this narrow confines of what you have seen, right? That is perpetuating these stereotypes, but like that's not necessarily the case one way or the other. And even if there was, right, that two people of a certain body type, that does not necessarily mean that these are being exploited, and that there's no value to them being together on film, or at least more or less value than anyone else.
Wait, value? What do you mean value? Value for who?
I said, again, maybe I'm not sure value is the word, like valid, maybe validity. They're not any less valid. Yeah, not value.
Well, I think it's I think it'd be more ethical than like heterosexual porn, but it's so unethical because they're still promoting, encouraging, enabling an industry that exploits women. I think that like, and in fact, many women who do straight porn also do lesbian porn.
My problem is that like you're saying that women literally have no minds of their own, that they have no choices, right? There's nothing they can do.
That's not what I'm saying.
No, that's what it's. See, we're presenting you all kinds of options in which you can backtrack on this, right? But it's no matter what the situation is, it's like, oh, women aren't necessarily being exploited by this industry, and that they can't make their own choices and decide this is something that I want to do. And that's exactly what some people do. So it feels like you are the one who's infantilizing these women, rather than, I'm sure the porn industry does that as well, but you do that too. I think there's definitely a middle ground. I think the porn industry can do that to women, and I think you are absolutely doing that, saying that they don't have their own choices, they don't have their own agency, right? That they must necessarily be exploited.
Do you have
Yeah,
the
so I
Dooby,
don't.
just real quick, a clarifying question. Do you have the same issue with, like, for example, non-sexual makeout scenes or something on camera with women kissing and fondling and things like that? Is your
That would it would
specific
really depend on the context.
okay? So, but there are instances of making out and kissing that you'd be totally fine with, like,
Yeah, I mean, there are instances of like pornography that I could be okay with, right? So it
what
isn't.
instances of pornography are you
You
okay with?
Well,
said gay
yeah. So
pornography, right?
no, that's I said that's more ethical, but it's still unethical, right? But
Oh,
so an instance of pornography that I could be okay with, given that like so I think that there's still a problem of the coercion of the capitalist system that might push people to get into this thing. But if you're personally selling like nudes to people, right? So you're taking pictures of your dick or whatever, or your breasts, and selling them directly to somebody for $5 or $10 a month, whatever it is, not through OnlyFans, where someone's taking a cut just because you happen to be on their platform. Right? I'm talking about directly to the person, right? That I think it was probably the most ethical way to do porn.
So you would be
But
okay
but even
with
wait 1 second.
So,
masturbation scenes,
Really,
things like
really
that.
quickly. But even then, I think you need to be very careful not to push certain stereotypes. And then you would also still be dealing with you still be doing this under the coercion of the capitalist system that might push people to get into that industry in the first place.
When you say you have to be careful not to push certain stereotypes, Dooby, what do you mean specifically? Because, like, say certain stereotypes are just predicated off of features that tend to be more prevalent amongst like certain kinds of ethnic groups, right? So, like, Black women and South American women tend to have like broader hips and things like that. Of course, there's more all morphologies are represented
Correct.
amongst all the groups, but just generally like they tend to favor this kind of body type. So if
Mhm.
they produce sexual imagery, it's feeding into just because of their body type, they're feeding into that stereotype. So how do they produce sexual content and
Well,
not
to be
feed
clear, I'm not
into
talking about like
stereotypes?
body types when I say stereotypes. I'm
Okay.
talking about like the action that they're doing. So if they make a porn where they are like tied up, being choked or whatever the fuck, right? Or being punched or spat on or just treated like an object, right? Which is what happens in a lot of these porn films. I think that's a problem.
Dude,
So I'm not talking about like them having big breasts or
mhm.
not blonde hair, whatever the fuck, right? Like I'm not talking about that.
But why is the niche like heretical, but then like those are stereotypes, like the black girl who has a big butt or the black woman who has large breasts or what, like why is that not heretical and that's not like a stereotype that's offensive? But then if you're doing this like niche stuff that I'm assuming you also find like morally offensive or whatever, like
Mhm.
why is that cross some kind of threshold that's like that's a stereotype that you need to not try to promote, but then these other ones that are you almost can't avoid them, like that
Yeah.
stereotypes okay.
So I might be like outdated on my like feminist literature on this, but my understanding is that the reason those stereotypes like a big butt, for example, is okay, like a black woman with a big butt, or like a fuck, what are they called? Pog, like a fat ass white girl, whatever it is,
yeah.
right?
POG,
you
PAWG.
know, Doobie, don't try to
Yeah.
act like you didn't
Yeah,
know.
right.
Hey, I've done a lot of reading into
Oh my
this. Okay,
God.
Yeah,
so
reading. We
please,
hear you.
okay, calm yourself. So these kind of things aren't really informed by the society, I think, or by the patriarchy. I think they're informed by the society, and I think what people find desirable is generally going to be affected by the society or the culture that they grow up in. Um, but so far as I know, they're not really affected by the patriarchy and the patriarchal structure and the push like objectify women in the way that like choking and spitting and cum on your face and anal and all this other stuff is. And
Well, Dibby, I
there's
would
studies.
just
Oh, can I just really quickly?
yeah.
So there are studies on exactly this,
Mhm.
on the impact of porn watching on like high school kids, young like college students, and how it impacts the way that they interact with each other during sex.
That's literally
How they're
everything. That's
they're
literally everything.
yeah, okay. So
Everything.
their expectations for what they're meant to allow to be done to them, what they're meant to do to their partner, right? All these things, right? So, if people are watching like really violent porn that objectifies women, that has a woman getting mouth fucked and shit, they're more likely to actually try this in the real world and to think this is the normal.
Okay, but say I disagree that like for instance the woman's body, or even say like a black man who has like a mandingo, quote unquote, whatever, right? I disagree that those are not informed by like society, and that there's not a history leading to this kind of stereotype that we see. Like,
Yeah, there might be.
oh no, I'm pretty sure it's unquestionable that there is, because you can find old caricatures of like black women and black men having these features. There's literature about this kind of stuff dating back to the time of slavery. So like that kind of stereotype, I think, feeds into this kind of history that we have as America. I don't think that that's not informed by this societal history that we have, and that's like the same as like this kind of BDSM stuff that you're saying. If you produce that kind of media, that's like heretical. But then if you do a black woman with these features that compared to like a lot of European women are exaggerated, like that's somehow it's okay to produce that. I think being consistent,
I mean,
the
yeah,
patriarchy
you could be
influences
right.
both of those things.
You could be
I
right.
think
I'm just really
yeah.
hesitant to like demonize or to like be rude to people for their like physical characteristics, right? So if you just happen to have like a big ass, whatever, I don't want
Unless
to say,
you're
oh, you
dating them,
can't.
right?
Well, yeah, unless I'm dating them. If I'm dating them, I have
Right.
preferences, and if you have a dark vagina, I'm not interested. Like that's just
Oh,
reality.
for fuck's sake! Oh my god! Why? Why? Come on!
Wax,
But
bro.
No,
He's
hold on, but
fixed.
Dooby's not
It's like
racist, though.
5
He said
o'clock
that
shave.
applies to all women.
Wax,
He said
bro.
that applies to all women of all
Oh
races. So.
boy.
Exactly.
This is oh god.
Okay, I'm gonna
So-
take this opportunity to get the fuck out.
Okay.
So,
Alright, dude.
yeah,
Never mind.
and since everyone's plugging themselves, follow me at twitch.tv/deathofcertainty. See you guys later.
See you, buddy.
Bye.
I
Bye-bye.
gotta
Get chat.
thank
Finally.
Combo V Carl. Thank you, Combo V Carl, for gifting 5 hot tier 1 gifts up to the channel. That's awfully kind. And these are our first subs, first time investing in this community. Thank you. And paying forward a sub that you got from our great friend Leah. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for that. That's awfully kind of you. It means a lot, does a lot for this community. That I appreciate it. Thanks so much, Combo V Carl. Yeah. And to everyone who got a sub,
like that.
welcome to the first generation. Okay, so we're gonna go to Amanda, who was in line before. We lost her. I know, Rage, and then Rage, I haven't forgotten. I know you've been waiting for so long. But Amanda, while we have you, I just want to make sure you can get in. Please go ahead.
He can go first. He's been waiting a while, and
Okay.
I've got my thoughts in my head.
Okay, all right. Rage, please.
I wanted to continue to ask Dooby questions. I know that a lot of people have asked, like both Wick and Prime and pretty much everybody, about your idea of women's autonomy / agency. But like, I am wondering, where else do you apply this ideology that like women can't really consent or fully consent to like pornography? Like, do you apply this in other areas of a woman's life, like with marriage? There's some historical precedent where marriage was like pushed onto women. They didn't get a choice in a lot of things. Like, would you say that marriage is an institution that women shouldn't be able to choose that? Would you say that women don't have a choice or aren't using an internal like mechanism for choosing who they date? Like, where do you think autonomy exists in women?
So can I hold on? Can I interject that, because that's actually kind of where I was wanting to go as well. Women were not viewed as separate entities from men in regards to sexual pleasure until, thank you, Dr. Kinsey, the 1940s. So all the way back to the Greeks, like way back there, when they had their sex pools and things like that, women's pleasure was not like ever talked about or a focus. And so I think it's funny that now that women are finally taking over their bodies and we're finally understanding what the clit is, right, guys? Yay!
What?
And like
Don't-
all this. Hold on. Nope. So all this progress is happening, and like now we're like wanting to go backwards and like king shame. Like there's plenty of women that like to do different things and not have vanilla sex, and having the ability to decide whether you want to go into porn or not go into porn is empowering. Now I understand that there is a financial aspect to this, right? Capitalism fucking sucks. Boo, capitalism. Yes. Okay, cool. But guess what? It's an easy way to fucking make money. And you know what? It's easy because the patriarchy, and all you guys are viewing everything through a man's lens, and you're not even considering like the way that women are viewing any of this, and My son just woke up. This is not an appropriate conversation. I'm going on mute.
Well,
Wow.
I just want to interject real quick because like I don't know about your guys' experience, but where I am at least, a lot of my personal friends started doing OnlyFriends on the side, like they're in college and they have that on their public
It's depressing.
Twitter. Like I honestly don't see if like there's a problem with it. They're enjoying it. They're owning their, who they are, and
Okay,
they're making money on
before I use this, it's gonna take a while. Essay, thank you for gifting 5 high tier 1 gifts to the channel. Really
Hell
appreciate
yeah.
it, friend. Thank you so much. It means a lot. It helps so much. Thank you, Essay. Just had to shout you out. The pick. All right, please get to it.
Yeah, it was just like it seems like a lot of these people are owning their own, like they have to understand the consequences, and it seems like there seems to be a pushback from people who still seems to think that this woman who does porn but doesn't know the consequences exist nowadays. Like it, it's not like a punishment, I say, like the lasting effects of it, but it you know it seems just odd to me that there's such a pushback against these people who own their own sexuality.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. That's fine.
To be respond, and then I want to get Rage. He's been waiting like so incredibly patiently.
Okay.
If you want to respond to any of that
Did you
stuff.
say Dooby or Tubi?
So I said Dooby.
Oh,
okay.
Okay. So I think that there's like a misunderstanding, not a misunderstanding. I think you think this is more like hyper focus than it is. I think that the problem of coercion exists all throughout the society. Right? Like I said earlier, I would like to push toward a system that provides the basic necessities for all people, just because they're citizens, right? So I don't want people to need to go out to and work to get food and shelter and all these things, right? There are areas of our society that have similar incentives for men, right? I think they're much less common, right? I think porn is one of them for like gay men who are like young and thin and can be called like twinks or whatever, right? But if I knew like a guy that was like getting into like jackass style films where they're just throwing themselves off fucking cliffs and shit for money, right? And this is totally their choice, but they're doing it because they need the fucking money. But of course, it's totally their choice. There's no coercion there at all, right? I'd tell them not to do it. I would tell them that they shouldn't do it. I would tell them it's a bad thing to do, right? So it's not just porn where these things where that coercion exists and that I think toxic incentive exists. So I'm not saying that it's just specifically women who don't have the ability to make choices. I think that given that we live in a patriarchy and women specifically have been trained to behave in certain ways, and men have been trained to behave in other ways. I think women are being pushed more directly into porn than men are. Right, and this is why we're talking about women when we talk about the porn issue, because they also deal with much harsher consequences in terms of like social stigma for like promiscuity and whatnot.
So let's go
Right,
to.
so,
Sorry, finish.
but,
I thought
yeah, that's
I
it.
didn't.
That's
Okay.
it.
What about
So let's go to. Sorry,
what do you think of
I
army?
gotta go to Rage. He's been waiting
Go ahead.
too long. He was online. So Rage, go ahead, please, Amanda.
Well, Dooby was answering part of my question because I was able to ask one part. But to follow up with what you just said about men, I don't really want to like drastically change the question. Just a quick answer. Like, would you consider sports where people are sometimes destroy their own bodies, like with the you get the was it CT or whatever the thing with the football and your concussions? Would you would you consider that in line with like what you were just saying?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a much better example than the jackass one that I thought of. But yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I understand that.
Okay, Amanda.
But yeah, you can go to Amanda.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, it just seems funny that like we're gatekeeping women into the sex industry because of the patriarchy, and now we're gatekeeping women on how to take back our empowerment in regards to the patriarchy. Like, we want to say fuck the patriarchy, let's go express ourselves in any way that we want to, but oh, here's the patriarchy telling us we're not doing it right.
Let's 2B.
Yeah. I don't think anyone's gatekeeping it, but I think it's fair to offer critique. I mean, I totally see where Dooby's coming from, because I do think that, like, I'm still confused as to how certain things are forms of empowerment. Because, like as an example that I think of often is, like, a lot of Black people want to reclaim, for instance, the use of the N-word, right? And to say, like, that's like empowerment. To me, I feel like what GSU Gambit is doing is empowerment. Like, he's taking his position that he's worked really hard to get to, and then getting computers for minority students so that they can actually economically empower themselves. And I understand that some women in porn do that, right? They start their own, like, production company or something like that, right? What is their distribution in the population now? Because I cannot imagine that that's most of the women. And I think this kind of goes back to that conversation that you guys talked about, like hip hop culture, specifically like gangster rap or whatever. Like, a few people are going to make gangster rap that puts out this negative image and this negative set of, like, aesthetic sensibilities, and then it's going to influence society in some kind of way. And then because a few people make money off of it, which they may or may not put into action of, like, setting up organizations to get other people out of it and all that stuff, like, is that of value? And I think that kind of is analogous to this. Like, some women are going to get wealthy off of this, and so they become economically empowered, and then they get this freedom to do whatever they want. A lot of women are going to get into this, especially when they're like 18, and then show up on set and they're supposed to do something really vanilla, and then it turns into like this crazy stuff, which they're kids, honestly. If you're when they're 18, they're kids, and they're not going to argue back, and they're just going to get taken advantage of. So I don't know, what is this form of pornography that can exist where it allows none of this negative culture around objectifying women and all of that stuff to exist, but then still allows women to be, quote unquote, as they call it, empowered. I just don't think that exists.
OnlyFans is actually a really great platform, which, granted, we're still utilizing men's ignorance, I guess, and their kinks, and cashing in on things that are, I wouldn't say wrong with anyone here, but inherently, what you guys are viewing as inherently immoral is, like, within yourselves. Like, like, that's the issue here. It's, like, within you, not like what you're viewing, and not how we're creating content or where we're creating content, but the way that you're viewing it is just, you're the issue. Sorry.
I would say
Wait,
that
so
this idea
okay.
of empowerment, right, that you were talking about, that you're narrowly defining, like, what empowerment is. Like, for instance, you brought up the point of making a production company. Why do you have to make a production company to be empowered, right? No, if it's financially empowered, okay, that's one thing, right? But that's not the only way a person can feel empowered, right? So if you tell someone that that being gay is wrong their entire lives, right? And they accepted that until they decide, no, I'm gay, or they are saying they're gay. Oh boy, they're saying they're gay, and I'm going to live my life how I love to live with the person that I want to live it with, right? They can say that is empowering, right? That same person could say that the F slur, right? That's used against our gay brothers and sisters, right? Like, I'm going to use that because that was used against me, right? To put me down. Now I want to use it with my friends or whatever, right? And we're taking it back, just like how women use the B word, I guess. I don't know. I don't want to say any words now because I'm gonna be in trouble. But like, but like they take these words back and saying, like, well, no, you can't hurt me with that. There's not, no money is being exchanged. No one's getting any richer or more powerful within society. But that doesn't mean that they aren't empowered in their own very small way. So, Tubi, I want you to respond to that, and then Amanda, you can respond.
Yeah, and I guess to me, I just don't privilege that kind of power or that empowerment that you're talking about there. Because when I do think about how people try to create these, what I would just call language exceptions, like, this group can say this word, and when they say it, it's a communication of brotherhood or solidarity or whatever. I don't ever feel like you're taking back that word, because when someone outside that group uses it, unless you've given this whatever they're calling permission, it immediately, the historical meaning that it has, which is as a slur or whatever, immediately takes precedence over whatever kind of in-group meaning it have, which is why we have these arguments about like whether people outside of this group can call me the N-word or whatever. I just don't like anybody to call me that because I don't look at that as power. The reason I emphasize economics is because economics allows you, in America, in a capitalist system, it allows you the ability to set up other things that can help empower you in terms of defenses that you have for yourself, material conditions, buildings that you can set up to empower the people. In GSU Gambit's case, literally the ability to introduce kids to the ability to get access to computer programming. So I think those are like real, like money is one of the strongest ways, in my opinion. Economic stability is one of the strongest ways, in my opinion, and competence, like the ability to get educated. Look at, like, Amanda can do what she does because she's educated, and it's probably going to give her access to better economic outcomes. I think that's real empowerment. I don't think that focusing on like trying to create language exceptions or trying to empower yourself through pornography, unless you become one of those women who who opens their own production company, so you can actively battle against those kinds of exploitative practices in the porn industry. I don't think that's real empowerment to me.
Yeah. Well, Amanda, you should take it because I really disagree with this. But go ahead, Amanda.
Yeah. So you're acting like there's these inherent things that make empowerment empowering, right? But like empowerment is completely individual, and you're blanketing over this entire industry as non-empowering. Yet again, it's very individualized. So I'm going to go through kind of just a weird thought process here, but it'll make sense at the end. When I went through my divorce, I found out that I was going to have to go through 60 days of conciliation as required by Iowa law, because Iowa law only allowed divorce if you were if you were a part of a domestic abusive relationship, or if there were elder abuse. My divorce was because my child was abused. And so I was not afforded that exemption, which meant that I was going to have to go through 60 days of counseling with the person that abused my child. So I got angry, got pissed, went and changed the law. It got signed into law, and everyone's all like, oh, yay, you are amazing, empowering, wonderful woman. Do you guys disagree?
Certainly not.
Nope.
Right? Okay. So also I was raped. And now let's just say that actually, so I'm gonna take this really fucking personal. Actually, it took me 2 years to have a intimate relationship after I was raped. Can you tell me that wasn't fucking empowering? Like, to finally like actually be intimate with somebody after that was taken away from me. And if I wanted to put that on video camera, how the fuck would that not be empowering?
I think that's, I mean, but are you, this is not to be dismissive, but do you think that is the same as like saying it's empowering to get on camera at the age of 18 and then have sex and then suffer all of the because are you suffering externalities because of that?
But you're also like neglecting the fact that like 1 in 6 women are sexual assault survivors. And so like, yes, this could be a very valuable tool to empower women of sexual assault and women of rape. Like, to have your autonomy taken away and then to blast it online for whoever wants to view it, that's empowering. That is just as empowering as it would be as if me passing a bill. And how is it not? Like, the only difference here is the fact that it's a woman in sex. Like,
I guess one perspective, I guess, that could you could argue is one instance is like a woman exerting like democratic control over politics, while the other is like a woman engaging in a market system.
yeah, except for technically, if you want to break it down to a market system, I saved a whole lot of women money in the end, in their long run, and ended up like so like with my bill, sorry, going back to that as an analogy here, now women's divorces are cheaper because, you know, when they're going through, it's often the husband that uses this. It's a form of actual spousal abuse in order for conciliation. Not always, but it often was. And so I took that away. I know this is like really stretched out here. I hope you guys can get my connection.
I actually I'm not sure if I do. It seems like the women being able to like save money was an externality to you engaging in like the rewriting of the law, while the other instance of like the what Tubi brought up, the idea of like a woman just uploading uploading something to like OnlyFans, that is like just a direct engagement in like a marketplace.
Under Tubi's analogy, right, that well, empowerment is engagement in the marketplace, right? Like it is becoming a producer.
Well, so I think like somebody in Leia in chat's hitting on it well. It's empowerment is obviously subjective, right?
Exactly. That's my point.
There's no, and so I how do we be critical of it if it is subjective? I guess, right?
And that's why I think this whole conversation is funny, because it's being subjective through men's eyes right now, through a woman's right to be expressive.
I guess like that's kind of an interesting part of this, though, is that because modern sex work is inextricably linked to a market. What is marketable, right?
Yeah.
So fix yourselves.
So it's,
like,
I mean, so capitalism equal bad. Capitalism equal bad. That's what it is again. It's literally what it is.
Think so. Well, no, I don't know if. So people's like.
Kobe, hold on, Kobe. I don't mean to interrupt you, but is there a way you could take away the capitalistic part of this empowerment to make it come back around, I guess?
So we could have sex work without capitalism, but we would still have and we wouldn't have like the marketization element, and so that would probably be like there'd be something there, but the desires of people do not, like, it's not spontaneous, right? Like, the people's desires, people's interests are socially reinforced, right?
Yes.
Can I ask a question?
Wait, just to finish off my idea there very briefly. So like one of the reasons why we would have like a society that has normalized sex work is going to have more of a demand for sex work, right? So I don't know. Go ahead, Bart. I don't know.
So do you think that would, like, with women's income inequality, that would help, right? That's somewhat empowering.
Maybe it would have to be like where it's down. Like as of right now, from what I understand, like I think like 1% of OnlyFans people make I think that in the average income like $300 a month. It's like some extremely low amount, right?
So same thing with Twitch, but same thing with Twitch, right?
I would argue there's a very exploitative element to Twitch.
Yeah,
like I think
exactly. Capitalism equals bad.
Well, yeah. So going back to something. Remember we were talking about earlier, fruit versus root. I'm not criticizing the root. I'm criticizing the fruit. One of the negative fruits of mass market porn is that we have right now we have people's sexual desires are completely intertwined with like the algorithm and the market, right? What you go on, what is on the front page, what is marketed to you, what keeps your eyes on it the longest, right? I'm not criticizing the root. I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong. Like I said earlier, I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong with women filming themselves anybody filming themselves having sex. But we have to understand that one of the fruits is that this filming is inextricably linked to like a algorithmically based, somewhat social media based like market, right?
Okay. This Hydra, do you want to say something?
Is your only argument against that there just the fact of profiting off of it? Like you're okay with someone filming?
Well, no. So, going back to it again, right? Like, I think that a labor relationship, there's an unequal balance here, right? Like the producer, the creator on OnlyFans, and the owner of OnlyFans, the owner of the brothel and the person working, right? And so, I would say that is that's the main, like the core of the unethical element there, right?
It sounds like you are against the fruit, though, like the fruit being patriarchy. I'm missing something.
Well, yeah, of course. That's what I said. I'm against the fruit, not the root. Like I don't think that in a vacuum, I don't think that sex work is necessarily a bad thing. But I think that in the current society we exist in, it seems like it has a lot of negative ramifications. Like
I heard that the opposite.
Yeah. Wait.
Can I ask you a question? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think one thing that we should clarify, because I feel like where y'all are going and where Joe is going in chat, everybody I think has said that we think that there are some influences that can push people to do this. We're not saying wholesale that everyone involved is just in a situation where they're virtuously looking to do this, right? We understand that there are pressures for people to do this. We understand the social dynamics that Dooby was talking about. We're just saying in totality, saying abolish it is potentially not a good thing for the people who do want to engage with these things and blah blah blah.
Yeah, what you're saying is you like the
So-
coom, so don't get rid of it, please.
Yeah.
Well, like my issue with that is the fact that like it's back to the like patriarchy, right? So like the issues where even if like women want to go into porn or sex work and whatnot, daddy issues, right? That like it still comes back to your thinking and your view of the patriarchy and you guys men trying to define this empowerment, and yet you're the one taking away the empowerment to begin with and then also after. Like,
Okay, so I think that word empowerment is really weird. I'm trying to find like a really like gentle way to say this.
okay, let's say satisfying. Let's use the word satisfying.
No, it's okay. So wait, hold on, Kobe. So I've been bouncing this around my head. Right. So it is true that some people who were the victims of molestation, for example, when they were children, feel empowered when they reenact that molestation as adults and dress as children. They feel like they're taking ownership of that moment.
We're getting really dangerous there.
No,
like
no,
reenact.
hold on.
No, that's
Wait, hold on. Please let me.
explain.
Please let me.
Explain.
Please let me finish. So they feel like they're taking ownership of that moment in their lives, from the most horrible moments of their lives, and they feel like they feel empowered by doing this. Right? It becomes a kink of theirs, and then it's something that they do privately. And if they were to put that, record that, and put that on the internet, I would still think it's a negative thing. Right? I don't want people recording videos of themselves pretending to be children and having sex, even if it makes them feel empowered personally.
You just psychoanalyzed women based on one experience or multiple experiences within the same dynamic. Like you're isolating events again, and that's the issue here. Like everything is so individualized. So like my entire point is no, hold on. My entire point is if a woman wants to go and do porn and be empowered by it, great.
Okay, but no, Amanda.
Don't come on. I'm not done. No. Sorry, I interrupted you, Kento.
No, I was just gonna say.
No. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, okay, I understand where you're coming from, but I don't think it's invalid to say yes. Everyone's definition of empowerment is subjective, okay, but there can be other reasons why that form of empowerment is not like good for society. So like, and I don't know that that's the only way that you can do it. Like Dooby's pointing out that like, okay, say there is a woman who does that to empower themselves. Well, now they're putting out media into the ether though that people are free to consume that promotes a certain like ethic as if it was sexual, as if there's something tantalizing about the media content. And that's not just like up to your interpretation. It's being uploaded to a site that you're supposed to find tantalizing content onto. So even though that act as an individual is empowering, it's at that point now it's starting to become damaging to society. Like, so should we, just because it's empowering to that one woman, like should we think that that's okay? Like that's a good thing now?
But why is it empowering to that one woman, and why the hell, like you guys are both the cause, the effect, and the after. Like, do you not? I don't know how to explain this in any other way, but like, just let women be fucking women. Let us do what we want to do. Let us get slammed up against a wall. Let us get choked. Let us video record it and shut the fuck up about it. Like, there's literally nothing. Hold on. There's nothing more dangerous. Like, you guys are acting like women doing porn. Like, why are we not talking about men in porn? Like, come on, seriously.
Because Dooby's okay.
Yeah, but not
with that.
really. Then it dives straight down. Like the fact that it's constantly coming back to women and then women's pleasure, and like I don't understand how you guys are missing the disconnect in regards to like the fact that like women have finally been discussed in regards to pleasure, and now here it is back down. Like you're wanting to silence us based on what your views of empowerment are, and then I know I'm being brought
Well,
here
then
with the
maybe
silencing term. Sorry, hold on. So you're wanting to silence us with the empowerment, and you're wanting to silence us with capitalism, and you're wanting to silence us with like daddy issues. Like, just shut the fuck up and let us do what the fuck we want to do. And if you don't want to watch it, don't watch it. You know what? And if you have kids, teach them appropriately when and if it is appropriate to watch and what is appropriate to watch. Let's not shame kids for their sexual desire, so then we go back down this fucking path. Like, there's so much we can do rather than sit here and have a Twitch stream on what women find empowering without fucking women. Like, seriously.
Okay, so I don't think we need women here to talk about the impact that porn has on society. No, but maybe there's a disagreement here, that like a core disagreement that we're missing. So Amanda, do you think that we live in a patriarchal society here in the United States? Yes. Okay. So do you think that within a patriarchal society, given all the training that women undergo within this patriarchal society, their expectations put onto women in terms of their quote unquote virtue, chastity, what their bodies, all these things, and how they might men might feel like ownership of those bodies, whatever the fuck, right? Like the point is their expectations put on women, they're not put on men, and there are social stigmas surrounding promiscuity that exist for women and not for men in the same way. So this is why when we talk about this issue, we tend to focus on the women because they're the ones that are negatively impacted the most. That doesn't mean they're the only ones impacted. Men are also negatively impacted by this, and we talked about men earlier.
Sorry, but you're missing the link here. Is that like negatively impacted by what and who and when? So like, let's talk about how are we negatively impacted at the start. Let's talk about how we're negatively impacted during. Let's talk about how we're negatively impacted after. I was actually asked by about 10 years ago to be in a porn video by Jenna Jameson's manager, and I had to literally sit there and consider what society's ramifications were going to be on my character on whether or not to do this. So it wasn't whether I wanted to do it for the fucking money, whether I needed the money, or anything else other than what men and how everyone else would view me in this regard.
Well, yeah, that's kind of the point. You do need to consider how society is going to treat you. So
Why?
encouraging women, so
The
encouraging
society
and so yeah, so I agree. We need to undo the patriarchy. I don't think encouraging women to get into porn while this patriarchy still exists and while they still need to deal with all the ramifications for that decision is a good idea.
Well, isn't this what the LBGT did, right? Like, people used to demonize their behavior and they said, hey, we have pride in our lifestyle. And that was a vehicle to normalize the lifestyle and to make things better for their community. So why shouldn't women have the agency to do the same?
Based. Thank you.
Yeah, based.
Yeah.
Wait,
Hydra.
so was that a question?
Yeah, was that a question?
Yeah.
I was telling someone in chat that I don't like pancakes. What was the question?
So so there were a lot of people that felt like being homosexual, being transsexual, being anything was negative in society. And there were two responses people could have had to that, right? One was shelter yourself and keep everybody that is ideologically against you feeling good by sheltering yourself. The other was to live a prideful life. And we can see the fruits of that is a more accepting America to different sexuality. So knowing that that's like the backdrop to, I guess you could call it sexual or sociological progress in our country, why wouldn't we tell women the same thing? Why do they not have the agency to make those decisions for themselves?
Okay, so I'm not saying that like women have zero agency, right? I'm saying that they do not live in a vacuum. Wait, hold on. Well, it is. I think sexual exploitation is a form of rape. Yeah, I'd stand by that 100%. I think that so long as a patriarchal structure exists, so long as capitalism exists, there is there's
Sorry, one question, Dooby.
there is
coercion
involved in their decision to get into this industry from the system itself. So that to me, if you're saying, hey, do this porn because you need money to get through college or to pay your rent, and if you don't get this money, then you're gonna end up on the street or dead or whatever the fuck. That seems like rape to me. If someone put a gun to my head and said, hey, suck my dick, or you're gonna end up on the street or I'm gonna kill you, that'd be rape.
Happening.
Right. So I don't see how it's any different, given that this is coming from the system itself.
Did Dooby literally just like explain why fucking our economic system sucks? Right? Like he's finally based.
I mean,
So
again, we've wrapped up.
There's another.
No. Yeah,
there's another woman on the panel.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear it.
Yeah, so we wrapped around to the point once again that capitalism equals bad. We've done it again. Hooray! Like for the fourth time. Like for the fourth time in this conversation. Okay, all right. Well, then if capitalism equals bad, then yeah, consent is is on a very wide spectrum, right? From absolutely no consent to full consent. But between there's a large amount of territory that each of our interactions within a capitalist society, when there is a power imbalance, when there is a need for resources, right, a limited amount of resources, that you can fall under, right, when you're within this interactions and within that spectrum. And so, but to simply call that necessarily call that rape, it could be, absolutely, right? But to necessarily call that all those interactions rape, I think it's just bonkers.
Well, not every single one. Hold on, not every single one, but I think a lot of them, yeah, probably.
Okay, great.
And to be I want to be very clear about what my position is again, because I feel like some of you that don't know what it is. So I'm not saying that like there's no possible way to have ethical porn, even within the capitalist system. Right? Like I said earlier, I think the most ethical porn you could do is if you're taking nudes of yourself and then selling them directly to your friends or whoever for $5 a month or whatever the fuck you want to do. Right? I think that's more ethical than anything.
Dooby.
OnlyFans and Pornhub.
I just want to ask him a question.
So if that was the way that people were interacting with it, with nude images or whatever or videos, that's seems fine to me.
Great.
Generally,
great.
What if Cash App takes a small
pull it back? All right. So, Joe, if you want to say something, go ahead. If not, then.
Yeah, okay. I'm really sorry, Amanda. I know another woman, but I don't think you're going to like what I have to say.
No, totally okay. Go ahead.
I do think that, of course, it's possible for an activity to be empowering for an individual. I don't think that makes the activity in the essence of the activity empowering. So my issue with porn is less to do with any sort of vilification or demonization or restrictions on the women who take part in it, and more to do with the fact that porn and sex work generally has somehow taken on this status in our current society where people don't want to criticize it. You can't criticize sex work. It is for some reason unimpeachable, and we can't talk about any negative impacts that it may have on women. And I totally agree that there is some sex work that is totally fucking bomb and empowering, I'm sure. I don't want to restrict women's ability to do it. I want to support those women and bring in regulations that make them as safe and happy and supported as possible. But I do think, particularly given the way that algorithms work, given the way that people's sexual appetites work, and given the way that capitalism works, women, whether they are working with a production company or working independently, will be put in a situation where ultimately it is likely if they want to make an income off porn, they're going to have to be doing shit that maybe is pushing the boundaries of what they originally intended to do. And as you said, a big part of why you didn't take up an offer to go into sex work is because of the huge ramifications socially. That doesn't change with us changing how we view porn. That changes depending on how we view women and sexual desire. And I talk about sex a lot on here. I reckon a lot of you think that I am like the most sex positive person ever. And I definitely am when it comes to freeing women's sexual desire. And I'm not sure that porn does that perfectly, because I don't see a as women get more and more involved in porn, I don't see a bunch of videos of guys going down on girls. I don't see a bunch of really accurate lesbian porn. I don't see a bunch of porn where there's like thick, intricate plot. I don't see any of this shit. I see women having their heads flushed down toilets. I see women being called bitch and slapped around. I don't see stuff that is made that makes me think, wow, women's sexual desire is really being displayed.
Please, let her finish. Let her finish. Please, Joe, get your point out.
I'm just saying, I'm sure I can find it. I think I was talking about it in my Discord this morning, Belisar or whatever it is called. I know it exists. But what I'm saying is, given the amount that sex work has been normalized and been said to be this feminist win, look at, like, this is empowering for women. Given the fact that that is the standard narrative in society, I expect to see sex work that does a lot more for female sexual desire than what we currently have.
But Joe, you are literally wrong about this. This, like, saying that there isn't more of this stuff, right? All the stuff that you mentioned. It literally has, like, over these years, they've opened more production companies doing exactly the things that you're talking about, right? They've before, categories that they never had, like simply like made by women or made for women, right? Have proliferated. All these things that you're talking about have happened, right? Now, if you go and say if it's enough or not, that I think it's an open question, right? But
do you think that I think you're missing the point, actually, like, which is actually, like, I appreciate Joe coming on here because, like, so I came on here just completely in defense just because of all the toxicity that was around it, but she brings up a very valuable part. But that's why I wanted to ask Joe's question. I think it might answer yours, Prime, is, Joe, where do you think the disconnect and the actual problem lies then?
In terms of, I think, as I have always said, I think we have seen a real liberation of women's sexual expression. Women are allowed to be sexualized, but we haven't seen a liberation of women's sexual desire. Women still aren't allowed to want. So yeah, Prime, maybe there's like one or two companies. Like I watch porn. I'm not like completely oblivious to what's going on in the porn industry. I may not be as big a coomer as half the people on the panel, but I've seen porn. I'm aware of what's happening. I'm just saying that given how much we fucking champion women and how feminist porn is, I really expect to see a lot more than what I see. Because yeah, that exists, but it's not mainstream. It's not what, if I click on porn in 15 seconds on Reddit, I'm not going to see a bunch of feminist porn clips.
So what
I think there might be a disconnect between American and Australian porn then, because like in a lot of the stuff that I see here, like on my end and like the people that I interact with, like it's very different than that.
In fact, though, there literally is. I'm thinking of an Australian company that actually does. I think something that Joe would find more to what she's describing. I'm not saying more to her liking, but more to what she's describing. What is your threshold here, Joe? Like you're saying mainstream. Like you're saying that how you're judging this is that if you type in porn into our Google machine, right, and what pops up, right, or the Pornhub machine, what pops up isn't immediately exactly what you're talking about, then it has the movement, the liberation movement, sexual liberation movement has failed in this regard. But like, I don't see how that is a valid measurement of this, right? The very fact that it is not quote unquote, a lot of things have taken a while to take hold, right? The very fact that this exists from an industry that was literally everything that you've said before, right? Like all of your entire description of it was actually quite accurate as to what it was before. That to see that movement to where we are now, right? Where you can actually very easily, I literally just stumbled. Someone else literally just stumbled upon one of these places. One of these sites today. They didn't let me know about it. They texted me. They told me about it. It's like, oh, really? Well, I don't want to be a part of that, but sure. But like these things, there's like not one or two. There's actually quite a few of these. That other person could list them for you, right? But they exist. So it seems like you're saying that there's some imaginary threshold that we have to reach before we can say that not that sex work is quote necessarily feminist, but that empowerment is being achieved. Joe.
It's just so weird that any kind of work is viewed as empowering. I just find it so okay, you know what? It's Leo season. Let's just go off. I don't give a fuck. I just find it incredible that it's like this one kind of work. When it comes to the left, all work is fucking slavery and all work is something that we should be looking to abolish. But sex work, wow, that's amazing. That's empowering. Imagine being a woman and doing sex work. Oh my God, what a boss babe. No, fuck that shit. Like, just be critical of it like you are every other fucking industry. I'm not saying stop women doing it. I'm not saying stop making it. I'm just saying stop acting like it's something that it's fucking not.
So hold on, we literally so you're
Exactly.
coming
Why I
into this.
jumped
You'll
on.
miss some of the beginning.
Yeah, we've been at this for hours on this, right? So we've literally criticized the
I
sex
just
work.
feel, Prime, every time I click on one of these panels and people are talking about porn, it's a bunch of dudes telling me how great porn is for women. And I'm not saying that it's not. I'm just saying, like, it is fucking annoying when especially when women still get like raped at such fucking high levels, and women can't even say that. Women say that they have rape fantasies because they can't imagine just desiring someone and not being the object of a sex act, instead of, like, they can't imagine being the subject of it instead of the object. Like, I really don't want to limit porn. I don't want to change it. I don't want to demonize women who do it. I want to support them. I just want people who talk about it to realize that they don't have to fucking glorify every single aspect of it and act like it's a revolutionized industry that's suddenly all about women and their desire.
So hold on, no, I think that's an unfair characterization of this talk, right? We've been at this for hours. I'm sorry if you didn't see that part, but that's literally what we've been talking about for hours, right? Like, if we went over this, we had those parts where we talked about it, parts where we defended it, parts where we criticized it, parts where we questioned whether it was even necessary, right? We did all those things, right? But I think it's fair to say that I think your criticism that you just made is not completely invalid. That oftentimes it is men saying that this is great and just conveniently this happens to benefit them in all ways and doesn't have those negative externalities. I think that's definitely fair, right? But we've literally talked about this, and we've talked about it not just this time, right? But so many other times we've talked about all these things, right? But it seems like you ignore those parts. You ignore those parts when it does come up, right? And only focus on the parts that specifically empower your narrative on this. Now, I'm not saying your narrative is actually completely wrong. I think so much of what you're saying is actually great. But like, I think I don't like how you're like invalidating these conversations. Just like, well,
yeah,
there's nothing of value being said here. Go ahead. Amanda.
I want to add.
I think that was my point. Sorry. So that was my point in hopping on this panel, is that, like, all of this is coming from a male perspective. All of this is coming from a patriarchal view. All of this is coming from demonizing women, like, from this society that is already completely in place, which is why I came in defense of it. Like, I can come in complete offense of it. I can come in and, like, rip the industry apart as well. But my entire point is that it's just baffling that there's people that have this blanket idea on what this industry is without forgetting that women are fucking women. Like, we are women. We can decide whether it's empowering or not, and we can decide whether it's not. And yes, there's people that get exploited and there's people caught up in the system, but just like there is with any other fucking group of people, like, this is a problem with society. So fix fucking society and stop taking it out on women. That was my point.
So GSU, go ahead, and then I want Joe to respond to what I said, because I say a lot to her. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, and Joe, like, so this started from our panel earlier, and then off panel, me and Dooby was talking, and he literally was saying, because we live in a capitalist society, all sex work is rape, and he was saying women don't have the capacity to really want the things that women say they want.
That's not what I said.
You absolutely said it. Like,
no, you're totally misrepresenting what I said.
I will go through my chat.
Sorry, we can't do this. Dooby, sorry, we spent a lot of time on that. Go ahead.
Since you said all of these things, I'm not strawmanning you at all, because that's why I was arguing you on the merits of. I was like, hey, some women actually do like these things. You're like, no, it's just social manipulation and blah blah blah. So we were coming out against him strong because he made a whole bunch of, like, really bad takes. But Joe, this is a thing that you kind of done before when we were having the conversation about the war on drugs, and we were saying that there are elements of it that were racist, but we were also outlining other things. You kind of strawmanned us to, well, you can't just call it racism. And it sounds like here you're saying hey, you can't just defend porn. We've all talked about the degradation socially that it can cause, blah blah blah, and it's not really a all porn is good porn or everything related to porn is good. It's just a acknowledgement that some people are adults and can engage in the system on a basis of wants and desires, and it's not solely manipulation.
Joe, please.
Yeah, okay. Well, I can only respond to a conversation that I hear. And obviously I was working until 6 p.m. So I had 15 minutes before I jumped on. I'm not straw manning you, I'm responding to what I've heard. So I'm sorry I didn't hear the hours before, but like I literally couldn't hear the hours before.
Okay.
And I feel like I've heard lots of porn panels on here before. And ultimately, what is baffling to me isn't so much the gender aspect, it's the fact that people on the left are, and I guess the right, I mean, GSU here, are very quick to sort of like talk about how capitalism and workplaces create unfair working situations. But to me, it's always amazing that when I jump in and I start listening, maybe I haven't had the whole conversation, but what I ultimately hear is, yeah, but it can be empowering for some. And I don't really care about when it can be empowering for some. Of course, there are always exceptions to a rule. I'm interested in why these conversations, maybe they go through uncritical parts, but I feel like the conclusion always comes down to, yeah, you know what? Maybe it's bad, but we shouldn't focus on that. We should focus on the fact that some women have it, great, and really find porn empowering. And I just think like that's great if you're like a middle class white woman who doesn't have to be in that situation. But it is super shitty for a lot of women who go into sex. And I don't even like making this argument because that's not even what I fucking believe in. What I'm saying is, always what I'm saying is that the bigger issues we have with sex and gender, are they made better by porn or worse by porn? And I'm just not convinced at all that sex work necessarily makes these things better by itself. I don't think that people want to talk about that. They just want to defend their access to porn.
So do they okay, so I think you're touching on something very interesting here. And like whether it makes things better or worse, right? I'm not sure if that's the right question to ask though. I mean, okay, let's say we ask that question. Ask that question, then I'm willing to say it makes it worse. I willing to give you that. That it makes it worse that the totality of porn as it stands today, right? Exclude even with the those companies I was talking about that were that have a different outlook on what porn can be, right? That the totality of it and its effects on society is more negative. But I'm not sure that's the right question to be asking, right? Like, or the right perspective to look at it. Like that, maybe that it simply just is, just like everything else is in capitalism, or at least it is another side of capitalism. Now, if you're talking about demolishing capitalism altogether, then I agree, right? But like we talk about this all the time, how within other environments, this lack of choice, right? And you said before, like an actress goes into this, right? And it maybe gets forced into doing something that she didn't intend to do, right? Going into any job and being forced to do things that you don't want to do, that you didn't sign up to do, right? You aren't being paid to do, but like you're going to do because that's the way it is, right? And it's
that's
wrong.
My criticism, Prime, but that's,
Please.
I agree with you. All I'm saying is let's just name that for what it is and not code it in this weird sugar coating of empowerment. Women are working. Sex workers are workers. They should be defended and have their rights defended like any other workers. But we don't need to say that it makes them fucking heroes for doing it.
So, okay. So that wasn't our point. At least not my point. I'm not going to speak for anyone else. That wasn't my point. When I was arguing with this, is arguing against the onslaught of that came out of Dooby, right? Saying that basically women don't have any agency and all these things, right? And that like it is necessarily like necessarily sexual assault. So like that's what we were pushing back against. That's what this whole entire argument has been framed against, is the extreme of what Dooby was saying. So I think what you're saying is fair, right? That that there's an overcompensation within left spaces, that seeing sex work being attacked, right? Instead, we defend sex work to the end, right? As it's a beautiful, industry, right? That doesn't have anything wrong. It's all positive because we want to be sex positive. Like we are coming from a history within Western culture in which sex was treated as a disgusting thing, something that should be done in private. And now, especially with the movements for our LGBT brothers and sisters, right, we're empowering ourselves to be our fully sexual selves, right? And in that process, we carry along porn with it. But like that means we can be uncritical of a thing that deserves criticism like anything else. But I kind of lost my point here.
No, yeah, no.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
No, wait, hold on. The only thing that's wrong here is a capitalistic patriarchy. Like, if we come back down to everything, it like really comes down to that. And that's because, like, if you look into any industry, like, who wants to actually be working in that industry? Like, most people are taking up jobs because they don't have a fucking choice, right? So, like, let's not like put it based on just porn. Like, that is just America. Like, everyone is picking up jobs left and right because they have to feed their fucking family. So let's like not place this on porn. And you know what? Porn pays way more than fucking serving someone's meal who also is gonna grow up my ass in the restaurant, right?
Yeah. I guess the end of my point was that, like, just because people aren't being critical of it, right? It doesn't mean that we also are put in these positions where we have to defend them, defend the very concept, right? Of porn, of sex work in general, right? And on the other side, we have people like Dooby who are saying that it's completely agency is gone. So like we have so it kind of necessitates this sort of response. So I think you can say that if you look back at this conversation, it wasn't critical enough, right? That if you even saw the totality of it, it's not critical enough. But we are doing it under the backdrop that so many leftists have to act in, and that we're dealing with a sex negative society. Does that make sense?
I guess it. Okay, so like when it comes to shit like Pride, be naked at Pride. Wear your ball and gag. I don't give a shit. When it comes to your kinky fucking shit, gangbang, whatever you want, I'm all for it. Do whatever you want. I'm not talking about like moralizing sex at all. Like I really don't give a shit about moralizing or pathologizing people's sexual desire. That's not my thing at all. But I mean, I didn't hear Dooby's points, but from the way that you're talking about them, they sound like pretty standard radical feminist criticisms of sex work and porn, right? This is politics. And my argument is, I think as I don't necessarily 100% agree with all of the takes about sex work that come out of radical feminism, but I have better arguments against them other than just like some women feel empowered when they do it. And I just think it is like this fucking emblematic neoliberal, just like I've got a sign where I've decided that sex work is work and I'm just going to hold it on a banner and I'm not going to extrapolate that argument at all. And it's like, this is a politics panel. Yeah, there are right-wingers who are going to moralize and pathologize. Yeah, there are people who are radical feminists who are going to be sex negative and say that all penetration under patriarchy is rape. And I think that if you actually think about those arguments and you come up with good arguments against them, you don't need to say that women are empowered. You don't need to abandon all of your leftist principles just to fight back against an argument that you haven't considered.
I would say we're not abandoning our leftist principles. That's the one thing
I think you are.
I think that women are empowered.
Hold on. No, I got to push back against that. Sorry. To say that we're abandoning our leftist principles just to engage in this conversation. Now, I think you say lots of things that are interesting, but I think one of those things is that that we could use better arguments. That maybe the arguments that we are using here in terms of empowerment are quite stale. I think there's something to that, right? But to say that we are abandoning our leftist arguments when dealing with the sex work, I'm sorry, Joe, that our version of leftism, right, includes an industry that you disagree with. that's fine, right? But to
No,
say that,
that's not it.
to say
My
that,
version of leftism criticizes
to say that
capital,
we've
no matter what the
to
work
say
is
that we've
involved.
abandoned this, right? When we were talking about exploitation, saying that like how that is wrong, and how like do we even need this, right? Whether it's even necessary to have parts of this industry, right, at all, right? Like we've talked about that. Right? We've discussed these things, and so like I take exception to say that we're abandoning our left. I'm I don't know. All right.
I have a question. I have a question for Joe.
I'll take it back. I'll walk it back. What I'm saying, I'm not talking about you specifically. I'm talking about the left generally and their view about sex work and their completely uncritical political eye when it comes to analyzing capital and labor in this particular industry. I'm saying that a lot of people abandon leftist analysis when it comes to looking at labor and production and capital when it comes to sex work. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
So, one quick thing for everybody else.
Can I ask my question?
No, but this is like real small, I promise. So, Joe, one thing that me and Prime both said is that we feel like these things are socially bad, right? There's more negative than positive, right? So we're agreeing with your premise. We're just saying that also, in light of these things being bad, people do have the choice and the agency to do whatever they want. So I'm a person that was I was like, if you'd have caught me 2 years ago, I'd have been given Dooby's take. But as I've talked to more and more people, and I watched like the American Bastiat debate over this, like there's different information that I've received from lots of women, and it's changed my opinion from where I used to be like Dooby to more like how Prime is. And we can say that these things are bad and causes lots of negative externalities, but that doesn't mean that we should advocate against these things. We should just say
Gamby,
that
I did.
I know.
Joe,
I'm just saying
this is
that.
my question.
I don't think we should regulate women.
This is my question. Joe, this is my question. Sorry. So, like, where would, like, I know you're totally against demoralizing or immoralizing people, right? Or like prescribing or did she leave?
No, she's there.
No. Okay, cool. So, like, I guess in your best world, utopia, how would you view sex work? Like, without capitalism and without the patriarchy, would you view it as empowering? I guess, how would you view it?
I mean, I would view it as work. I guess I don't need it to be empowering. I definitely think sex work would exist outside of capitalism. I definitely think that would happen, but I would view it as work. I think for me, in terms of like, you're not going to get any good prescriptions about how we handle this situation without an honest description. And that's what bothers me, is the constantly feeling like we're obfuscating the reality of the sex work industry.
And I feel like you thought we were kind of on the different, like opposite spectrum there, and that was kind of like my point to everything, is in regards to it's always brought back to like how men view us and how the patriarchy is ingrained into this society and engraved into capitalism. And I guess
you're my boo. We never really disagree.
Yes, love you.
Hydra.
Anyway, I just wanted to come and start shit and then leave because.
Wait.
And hold on, I just want to say that, like, hey, I bring Joe to your streams twice.
I want to leave you, but I would like to ask a question to Joe and Amanda and Prime before. I don't know the answer to this question either, and my answer might be it's different for different industries. But do you think that engaging in wage labor is a form of empowerment, or could be a form of empowerment even?
Yeah, I mean,
depending on how much money is involved, yeah.
What system are you living under?
It's subjective. Yeah, I mean, they're under so many. Like, is it empowering to like carry bags of cement back and forth like all day long? Is that empowering? I don't know. Maybe
if you're
like
trying to get ripped.
So I have a question to everybody on this panel, and then there's somebody that Head. You've wanted to talk for a really long time. Sorry. So on this panel, if everyone was offered $1 million to go and fuck on camera, who would do it?
Yeah,
I'd do
yeah.
it
I
for
would do it
10K.
for
Yeah,
like
yeah,
more
No
fun
way,
than
but I'd
that.
do it for free.
10K. Dead ass right now.
Did you
Any
say you would
offers?
do it? I'm sorry, Joe. Did you say you would do it for free? I didn't catch that. Okay.
I said absolutely not for $1 million, but 100% I'd do it for free.
For free. Okay.
Joe, you got CB?
Yeah. Your morality here is high as fuck.
Okay. All
Like,
right. Well, all right. So, but yeah, I'm not. Did that? Well, I don't think that was. I'm not sure if that's a satisfactory answer to your question, Kobe.
I think that that's just a disconnect, at least from my perspective, right? Right. My opinion of this comes from reading female feminist authors that critique sex work under a capitalist patriarchal system, and their argument would be that engaging in a wage labor system is not empowerment, right? They would argue that selling your body is not empowerment. I know that selling your body is a characterization that some people have a problem with, so I understand that's already a bias in some way. And then on top of that, I also think there's other arguments you get into and stuff like I really have a problem with the idea of like sexual desire being so affected by what's marketable and what is driven by the algorithm. And I think that there's a lot of like modern feminist writing about that, which I find interesting as well.
But people find purpose through their work, right? And people.
So in Marxist theory, that's called false consciousness, right?
Okay, but people. All right. So you're saying that those people they don't have. That they can't judge from themselves the value of like the sweat of their brow. Like they can't do that. Like they're in this system, and so like they're within the matrix, and so they can't recognize.
Yeah, I'm sure that you would agree with that in some respect. There are obviously people in America. Well, hold on, Prime. Do you think that you would agree that America is not like a fair system, right? Like that you work at a job and it's not going to equal that. Like if I work at McDonald's, I'm not necessarily going to move up, right? But there are people. What I'm saying is that there are people that do believe that, though, right? That would be my argument. I don't know if I would say they can't choose for themselves, but I'd say like I think that a society can socially enforce that certain things are preferable, that other certain things are empowering that if framed differently they would disagree with, right?
Sure. Yes. But that doesn't mean that that doesn't invalidate everyone's experiences. So
yeah, of course.
Yeah. So like, I mean, different work can be judged differently. The circumstances that people find themselves in work can be judged. The pay, right? And what each person gets out of it, all that factors into it. And to say that it's just an illusion that they're experiencing, I think that's too much. Again, like if you're talking about capitalism bad, I agree, right? And that we can't. You could say that we can't properly consent to any of this stuff. All right, great.
Oh, but can I make another clarification? Just to kind of, I think there's somebody asked me a question in chat that I think is leading to I want to clarify. Just because something isn't empowering, I don't think it's necessarily bad. I don't necessarily think that a wage labor system is bad. And again, going back to it, I don't necessarily think that sex work is bad. I would probably advocate for like I think it's like the Nordic model or something like that, decentralized or decriminalize sex work. I think that there's a lot of problems with it that we have to be like, I think, to Joe's point, we have to be really frank with the fact that like any other system, people don't, there are people that like to cook, and then there are people that are line cooks, right? That like go and they get at 6 a.m. and they make pancakes for 12 hours, right? And then we just have to be realistic about it. That's all that I would say.
I agree.
Yeah.
Like I feel like we've said this. We've said all of these things.
I understand what you're getting at as well, but the issue would just be like, I think that we have different we emphasize different parts of the different axes of the conversation, I guess.
Okay.
And I think, not that I want to talk for Joe, but like her problem is probably like moralizing or immoral entire argument. Like we're like blanket stating whether like something is immoral or not moral, right? And the fact that like whether it's moral or immoral is coming from a male perspective once again. Sorry. So like it always comes back to this patriarchal fucking the way that our economy works, right? And like let's break it down. Let's like take it all the way back. Let's make it so that like it's empowering for who it wants to be, empowering for not who it wants to be, so they can decide not to. If everyone has the access to what they need, to decide whether what is empowering to them or not is like, I guess that's where I'm completely lost.
That burger flipper at McDonald's. That burger flipper at McDonald's could have been a person who has had life completely fell apart. Could have been on drugs, right? Could have been on the streets. And this is their first chance, right? And hopefully one in a long series of steps, but to get back on their feet. So coming in every day, right? And that exact same job, which the person right next to them feels like they are fucking enslaved, right? Yes, they could feel empowered. To say and to tell them that they aren't necessarily, right? I think that in itself is wrong.
I want to be clear that I haven't done that, but I also need to leave the panel before I start whiling out and saying shit I don't really mean.
Well, yeah, Joe, well, at some point we need to actually just hash this out, and not at the end of this. We're way past the end of this.
I actually don't know if we'll ever be able to hash it out, though, because, like, I think you and I have very different views on this.
I think we can come to consensus. I think we've been getting closer and closer, as we usually do when we have these arguments. But
yeah, I don't know.
Well, okay. Well, when we have to actually do this one time, and actually try to knock this, or maybe we can't come to consensus, but at least settle this and understand where we are for the rest of time. Anyway, bye, Joe. I'll let the rest of you guys get your points.
Okay, wait. I just want to say bye, everybody. Bye, chat. I haven't been reading you, and big shout out to all my sex workers. Keep doing what you have to do. Okay, love you guys. Bye.
No, wait, Joe. Oh
okay,
no,
sorry. We got 2 people. Sorry. Yeah. We could definitely do that. Or you could do that in private. That's another thing. So Hydra and then 2B, and quick, please.
All right. So I think. Tell me if I'm wrong here, but I think that this all started by talking about like tube sites or OnlyFans or that type of thing, right?
I don't know. I don't fucking remember, honestly.
I mean, like, it started with a discussion about
like, amateur porn, I think, right?
No,
it was the proliferation of revenge porn on tube sites.
Yeah, no. It started before that. I forget what happened on the.
Dooby.
Connor.
Dooby was being Dooby.
Yeah, that's where it started.
I'll just make a quick point to
being
what
cracked and actually trying to empower women, unlike you people.
Okay, all right, sorry. Go ahead.
Whatever that means, dude.
It's the true Marxist.
So okay, just to respond to Dooby real quick. There's this whole bubble concept of exploitation, which I totally agree exists. There are 2 extreme ends. One is like fucking physical force. The other being like, shit, it's the 4th, I've got to pay rent. And I don't have any like moral qualms with doing whatever thing. So then you do it, you can continue to fucking exist. I just don't understand how that's like, it needs to be empowering or whatever. That doesn't make sense to me. Like, I would argue, I manage a restaurant. I've worked in restaurants pretty much my whole fucking life. I would argue that I'm being more exploited by doing that because 1, I don't have like a formal education. 2, I don't have time to go figure that out and do something I actually care about. So I'm forced, just under, circumstance and all that shit. I would argue that somebody being like, oh, I'm in graduate school or whatever, like, I don't mind taking photographs of myself or filming something, like, whatever. I would argue that they have a lot less exploitation on their shoulders than I do. Not to take away from other things, obviously. But, like, I just don't understand how you have to agree with one extreme of those things to kind of agree with Joe.
TB.
Like it.
Sorry. Oh, sorry. Were you done? I thought.
No. Yeah. You're
okay,
good.
TB.
Yeah. I mean, to me, I don't know. I think Joe came on here and she ran into the same kind of fundamental disagreement about like what empowerment is and what value certain manifestations of empowerment have. So she talked about like, she literally explicitly said, I don't care if porn is empowering to a few people, a few individual actors in pornography. And I posed literally the same question, but like several conversations before she even came on. So to me, that's where we're differing, because people are saying, oh, that we're making this into a moral quandary or whatever. I don't think Dooby at all brought up the morality of individual actors.
Yeah, he
engaging in pornography.
yeah, he calls degenerates. Like he's
I called you guys
done
degenerates.
many times.
He called you guys degenerates. As far as the people, like the pornography, the women, he did not. I don't think he made any statements about their morality. What he talked about was how the nature of the work is coercive and what factors, both societal and economic, lend it to be coercive. But I don't think he made any statement about that. I mean, I don't think that's where we're disagreeing. I think we're disagreeing about like the nature of empowerment. He's talking about you guys. So when he's talking about the people consuming it, then yeah, he's making a moral claim. When he's talking about the women who are actually engaging in activity and making it, it's not what he's talking about. I think that's a misrepresentation.
Gambit, check your DMs.
Dooby, do you eat at restaurants? Just out of curiosity.
Oh my god. Sorry, I know. No more curiosity. So Gambit, give me an answer right now. We've already talked about. Okay, we've already talked about all these things. And we got stuck. This is the thing. This is why I had a problem with Joe coming here of only 15 minutes of it. We really got stuck on the empowerment talk, and we were talking about much more than that the entire time. We've talked about all facets of this conversation, right? But then it's like, well, all you're talking about is empowerment, and I don't care about empowerment. Oh, well, great. Well, that's not the only thing we talked about. We discussed so much more than that. I think, right?
No, obviously it's much more than that, but I disagree that what you didn't get stuck on with Joe was this concept of empowerment. That's exactly where you guys got stuck. And that's probably why she said we're not going to reach an agreement. We can't agree on this thing because we're not talking about the same thing.
But we're not.
Wait, no, but he was making claims that it's impossible to consent and a bunch of other stuff.
That's what
I've been having this conversation with Dooby since 11:30 p.m.
Yeah.
So he's made a bunch of claims, and it's not just the empowerment thing that was. I think Amanda brought that up recently. I don't even think that had been brought up before Amanda jumped.
Multiple conversations are being kind of lumped together.
Yeah, everything's exactly that.
So just a very brief timeline, if I could. Dooby said that porn is rape on the panel, on the walk-on panel, because we live in a patriarchal society. I then brought up later on, wanted to talk about the ethics of consuming amateur pornography that you can't verify is not revenge porn. I wanted Dooby to come on because I was interested in his take, in part to kind of continue to see what his take was on the rape thing. And we started talking about the ethics of consuming pornography in a patriarchal society, which kind of gets larger to the empowerment talk and stuff. And the empowerment talk, the algorithm talk, the wage labor talk, that kind of stuff.
And he did question the character of individuals who take part in it, so including the female talent. Being part, saying that they are advancing this patriarchal system. He said all of that.
We'll do. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But hold on. But I don't think. Hold on. But that doesn't mean that I think they're bad people.
Yeah. How does that at all tie to the morality?
I think we need to be honest.
Doesn't say anything about whether they're right or wrong or good or bad or anything.
So what
are you talking about? You're throwing that onto his statement.
Okay. I don't care anymore. I've argued this for 6 hours. I don't care anymore. In way over time. I feel the thing is with me and Joe that. What always happens is that we're on these panels and then everyone else's arguments gets lumped together, right? We don't have a through line for this, right? And it's jumped. So I'm dealing with if Joe is responding to a conversation that is focused on responding to Dooby's perspective rather than our full understanding of the situation, our full perspectives, right? It's simply a reaction to what Dooby is saying, right? And then to criticize this conversation that we have because it doesn't cover all the nuances. Well, of course, because we're dealing with fucking Dooby's point of view. We don't have much time for all that. I think that our conversation may have been deficient here, right? For all kinds of reasons. But that doesn't necessarily reflect our full understanding of the subject, right? And the whole thing, the leftist, she backed off of it, but abandoning leftist argument, that I don't like at all. Not at all. But it is what it is.